Hello, world changers. I'm here in my favorite spot again, ready to read some more of Kingdom Keepers. If you guys remember, the last part that we had in Kingdom Keepers was that he went to a museum of Walt's original desk, Walt's original pens, and he was out to search for Walt's first pen. But as he found it, he got trapped into a room and it was very icy and cold from the other side. Now, using the clues we have earlier, we found out that it could be Maleficent, but they're not sure. And then there was a twist at the end of the chapter where Jessica could have been the one that was Maleficent the whole time. So let's read on. Chapter 29. Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, the most fun of any of the park's special events, was not to be missed. It provided a good opportunity for the kids to bring the pens to Wayne, since they would have to deliver them in person and not as a DHI. All 5 of the kids had planned to attend, using up one of their legal visits to the park. Finn wasn't sure who to trust anymore, but certainly not the pirates. Their apparent connection to Jez made him all the more curious, and all the more cautious. The party took place at night, after hours. Main Street was decorated to match the occasion. Costumes were all but mandatory, and ghoulish characters walked across the streets, adding to the chills and thrills. Philby believed the party also provided Maleficent a rare opportunity to use all the costuming to hide herself. A witch would go unnoticed on a night like this. She could meet with other overtakers without raising an eyebrow, and could move about the park freely. If she was plotting a way to take over the park, this, of all nights, seemed like the perfect time to spring her plan. The kids, not DHIs, had a plan in place to keep both Pirates of the Caribbean and a haunted mansion under close watch. They chose the haunted mansion because ghosts and goblins would serve a witch well, and if Maleficent planned to take over the park, now or in the future, she would need an army of overtakers supporting her. Finn's mother dropped him off at the school parking lot. He suffered through the usual lecture from her about good and proper behavior. Snore. Over 300 of his fellow schoolmates, including Dillard, rode the school bus shuttles to the Magic Kingdom. These same buses were to take them all back to school at 11 o'clock, when the party ended and when the park closed. Parents would pick up their kids in the school's parking lot. Once inside, the plan was for the kids to meet at the statue of Roy O. Disney outside of the fire station in Town Square. From there, they would divide and conquer, as Maybeck put it. Having struggled with costume ideas, Finn dressed in black jeans, a black t-shirt, and a new cape. He wore a black mask over just his eyes. He thought of himself as Zorro, which in truth, he was dressed for an adventure they might encounter. At 8 o'clock, thousands of kids and their families poured into the park, wearing elaborate costumes that added to the heightened sense of fun. In any other year, Finn would have headed straight to the rides to get in line, ready to scream and be frightened. Despite its name, Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party offered plenty of frights for its guests. Music was pumped into the park, not your typical Disney songs, most of which Finn could hum from memory, but instead, monster tunes and ghost songs, punctuated by fits of ghoulish laughter. The park came alive with the sounds. Arriving as planned, a few minutes past opening, Finn found it difficult to pick out his new friends. This was partly because there were so many people flooding into the park, and partly because of the costumes. "There you are," Dillard Cole said. He'd elected to come as a crab, wearing a large round shell made of brown paper, his hands in oven mitts for claws, and several sets of springy legs protruding from the shell. "You look like a giant tick," Finn said. "Crabs aren't brown." "Grocery bags. It's the only paper we could find." From up close, Finn saw that Dillard's costume was indeed made of dozens of grocery bags cut open and taped together. "You seen anyone from school?" Finn asked. "Nah, you?" "Nah. I hate Halloween," Dillard said. "Then why did you come?" The crab shrugged, all its legs bobbing at once. "The candy, I guess." "Where have you been anyway? Seems like we never hang out anymore." It was true. Finn's life had changed since the crossing over had begun. He quickly made new friends with the DHIs. Their quest was all he thought of anymore. Even his homework was suffering. "You know what's going on," he said, "or at least some of it." "Your superpowers?" Dillard teased. "Yeah, like that." Finn hadn't told Dillard half the stuff he'd been through the past weeks. He led a secret life now. Until this moment, he hadn't realized just how secret. Worse, until he and the others fixed things, until the growing power of the Overtakers was challenged and stopped, his life wasn't going to get much better. Staying awake all night, feeling tired all day, battling his parents, telling his mom the truth, which she, of course, found unbelievable. "What ride do you want to go on first?" Dillard asked. "Earth to Finn. Hello?" Finn couldn't hear because he'd spotted a witch heading for them. Among all the other costumes, this one in particular stood out, not just for the costume, but for the girl that wore it. As Dillard turned to follow Finn's gaze, his crabbed body and legs hit kids behind him, drawing jeers of complaint and clearing a space around him. "Check out Cruella de Vil," Dillard said, following Finn's gaze. "Hey, isn't that..." "Her name's Jez." "From the car wash." "Right." Jez wore a skin-tight black and white leotard with black and white tights. Her hair was half black, half white. She carried a masquerade mask on a stick and wore white gloves that ran all the way up to her elbows. The small mask was black, like Finn's Zorro mask. She had a black beauty mark drawn onto her cheek to the left of her lip, which was exaggerated by bright red lipstick. She looked like a college girl. Her cape swished dramatically as she walked. It wasn't made of cheap costume material, but something much, much nicer. She drew looks from a good number of boys as she passed. She headed directly to Finn and Dillard. The song playing from the bushes was Monster Mash. Jez stepped up to Finn, standing a little too close. They almost touched. Finn felt tempted to take a step back, but he held his ground. Jez spoke softly, privately. "Great minds think alike," she said. "Our masks," she added after Finn failed to respond. "Hey, Jez," Finn said. "Look out, Zorro," she warned. "I might put a spell on you." She briefly dropped her mask and met eyes with Finn. She smiled. Dillard coughed. A coughing crab with dancing legs? He cleared an even bigger space for himself in the crowd. "Maybe you already have," Finn suggested. She said, "A good spell, I hope." "Are you a good witch?" "The best," she said. "Can't you tell?" She spun, her cape rising. She ended her twirl facing Dillard and said to him, "Aren't you going to offer to get something to drink, Sebastian?" "Hey, she guessed I'm Sebastian," Dillard said proudly to Finn. "You've got enough hands, don't you?" she asked, tweaking one claw and sending it bouncing up and down. Finn said, "He's not an errand boy. He's my friend." "Hey, I don't mind," Dillard said. He raised his oven mitts, made claw motions, and waddled off in search of something to find for them to drink. "He's a good boy," Finn said, when Jez faced him again. "He's big, so people make fun of him, but he can't help it." She ignored what he'd said. "Want to do the Haunted Mansion with me?" Jez asked. Finn felt his throat tighten in panic. The mansion was an attraction that seemed perfect to hide overtakers. "It was way too crowded," he said. An awkward moment settled between them. "Miss Congeniality," Finn said. "What? The Sandra Bullock movie?" Finn inquired. He pointed toward the park's entrance. "A friend of mine. Charlotte. You met at the sports park," he said. Charlotte also wore makeup and lipstick, which gave her high cheekbones and a thinner face. It was a good disguise. Her blue cocktail dress swished as she paraded straight over to Finn. Charlotte looked Jez up and down. "Adorable," she said insincerely. "Imaginative," Jez said back to her. Charlotte ignored Jez. "Sorry if I'm late," she said. "No problem. Finn and I are going over to the Haunted Mansion," Jez announced. "Want to come?" Charlene complained, "But Finn, you promised me the first ride. Do you remember, Finn?" She was giving him the excuse they needed to get over to Pirates and be with the others. "When you're right," Finn said, a little awkwardly. He asked Jez if he could catch up to her later for the Haunted Mansion. She frowned. Dillard returned, bearing too many drinks to hold. He dropped one. Jez reached out and caught it as it fell. She not only snagged the cup, but somehow managed to catch all the soda as well. Not a drop spilled to the ground. It was an impossible feat. Finn took a moment to replay it in his mind. "How did you do that?" Charlene took the third cup from Dillard and thanked him. Jez said. Dillard had intended one of the three for himself, but didn't tell that to Charlotte. When he moved, his various arms bounced wildly. He mumbled and headed off to get another. "You didn't answer me," Finn reminded Jez. "How did you know that?" Jez stumbled over her words as she made what was clearly a lame excuse. "My mom doesn't like me messing up the kitchen. I've gotten pretty good at not spilling." Catwoman approached. Finn recognized Amanda immediately. Finn hadn't spoken to her since the collision behind One Man's Dream. He couldn't sort everything out. From what she'd been doing here, why the cold hadn't seemed to affect her. He didn't feel like hanging out with her tonight. He wasn't sure how to tell her. Dillard returned fairly quickly and said hello to Amanda. Her attraction remained to Finn. "Finn?" Amanda said. Finn turned her back, not sure what to do. Not that, he realized as she stormed up. He felt rotten. Finn offered Charlene and Jez another drink and then headed off himself, grateful to get away. The girls hung with Dillard, who struggled to get a paper cup to his mouth. He spilled some soda down his front when one of his own claws banged against him. Amanda snuck up behind Finn in the soda line. "I saw her, Finn." "Jez, behind One Man's Dream. Those monitors are old and fuzzy, but I'm sure it was her, and I came over here to warn you." Again, Finn didn't know what to say, didn't know what to think, so he just didn't turn around. Amanda continued, "Doesn't that strike you as a little odd, a little too coincidental, her being like that right then, right here, right now? You were there too. That struck me as odd as well. I just explained it to you." They stepped away from the soda line. Finn juggled 3 cups. "You weren't sure it was her. You said no, so you just said no yourself. Think about her name, Finn. Jezebel? Come on, the Bible?" He was not exactly a Bible scholar. "Jezebel is wicked, evil, just like a witch. And that fits with the cold, right?" Amanda said. "It could have been anyone doing that," Finn blurted out, thinking of the woman in the car. She leaned back and looked at him as if she didn't know him. "What are you thinking? Are you serious?" "Me? Listen, there's something you need to hear. Something I need to tell you about her. I'm not supposed to. Do you understand that? This could get me in big trouble." Suddenly, Amanda shuddered. Her head jerked up toward the sky. Her shoulders shrugged and stiffened. Her eyes rolled in her head. Finn thought she was going to faint. He dumped all the drinks into a nearby trash can, freeing his hands, and took her by the arm. Then, by the waist. She sank into his arms. She felt cold, really cold, and stiff, as if she were suffering some kind of seizure. Finn wanted to avoid making a scene, walked her to the bench, and sat her down. A commotion erupted behind him. He turned to see Charlene now sitting down on the sidewalk, her head hanging slack over her knees. She had apparently fainted as well. An adult hurried toward Charlene. "Finn, it was Willa!" Late to arrive. "No time to explain," he said. "You've got to get Charlene over here before people start asking questions. The giant crab, that Dillard, he'll help you. Hurry!" Willa, who came as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, rushed across toward Dillard, took hold of one of the oven mitts, and dragged him over to the wilted Charlene. Finn checked Amanda. She looked half asleep, her eyes barely open. Thankfully, she was breathing normally. "Amanda," he said, but got nothing from her. A brownout, he thought, but a brownout affecting a human, not a DHI. "If you're not careful, I'll cast a spell on you." Hadn't Jed said something like that? Was he imagining that she said that? He looked around, his eyes searching for Jez. Hadn't Amanda been just about to tell him about something about Jez when she had fainted? Willa and Dillard had Charlene walking between them. Definitely a good sign. There, Finn finally spotted Jez. She stood on the far side of the street, talking to an adult, a thin woman with a large witch's hat. I have a feeling, personally, that Jez is related to Maleficent. I think Maleficent is her mom in real life. That's just my guess, my prediction. He watched as Jez pointed in that direction. He felt goosebumps race up his spine. What was she talking about? Then, just for an instant, Jez accidentally met eyes with Finn from across the street. A moment later, Jez led the woman off, absorbed by the crowd. "Listen," Finn said, trying to think. "I gotta go," he told Willa. "Wait, and just leave us here?" Willa asked, astonished. "You know anything about the Bible?" he asked Willa. "A little, sure. I I think I know what's going on, he announced to Willa just as Philby and Maybeck showed up. I'm glad somebody does, Maybeck said. Philby was wearing a white curly wig and big black glasses, calling himself Einstein. Maybeck had sprayed his hair gray and wore the flag of South Africa on his sleeve. Nelson Mandela, Maybeck said. Finn. You guys, come here, Finn instructed as he had spotted Jez and the woman again. They were well down Main Street, heading toward the castle. Amanda sat up suddenly, surprising them all. Willa yelped. Don't! Amanda gasped, looking directly at Finn. You have no idea of their powers. She slumped back in the same lost state again. We've got to go now, he told the boys. The three boys hurried down Main Street. What about, Maybeck asked. Finn tapped his chest. I brought the pens. Aren't we going the wrong way? Shouldn't we be going to the fire station? Don't ask me how, but Jez did this to Charlene and Amanda. It made them sick. That's ridiculous, Maybeck said, his voice raspy. They were nearly running. Finn explained. Jez hooked up with a witch? In costume? Or for real? Super skinny, long black hair. Sounds like anybody we've been seeing lately. And, oh, by the way, Jez, just happens to be wearing long black gloves. Can I just say you've completely lost it, Maybeck said. And by completely, I mean 100%. Gloves. Jez is wearing white gloves tonight. They go to her elbow. Amanda and I saw those gloves at the car wash. Maybeck answered. He'd seen them too. Finn said, Jez is a witch, and so's her mother. Philby and Maybeck looked stunned. You want me to prove it? You'll come with me. Following now, Philby said, what if you happen to be right? In that case, what are we doing chasing a witch and her daughter? I mean, how stupid can we be? Maybeck huffed. I'm going to have you guys institutionalized. Am I the only sane person left? Wait, Finn said, stopping them. They ducked behind a pillar in front of the Main Street shop. He pointed. Jez and the woman turned left at the plaza just before the castle. How much do you want to bet they're heading to Pirates? Remember the conversation on the monorail, Philby said? Amanda told us Jez disappeared there. A figure of speech, Maybeck interjected. That's all it is. As Finn led them left off the street as well, Maybeck said more seriously, listen, I've been there, where Charlene and Amanda are right now, feeling sick like that. You do not want to mess with these people. They aren't people, Finn said. That's the whole point. If they were people, then Wayne and the others could deal with them. This is up to us, you guys. No one else is going to do this. We're going to go in there after them, Philby said. Jez and the woman arrived at the entrance to Pirates of the Caribbean. Sure enough, they headed inside. I do not like this, Maybeck said. What happened to voting? All in favor? Finn asked. He and Philby raised their hands. Maybeck groaned. They stopped short of the entrance and stared warily at the Spanish-style building. Okay, Philby said. Now I'm scared. That is where we're going to stop for today. Remember, the world is better because you guys are in it. See you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.